We had promised that we will open it for question and answers, a very short session of that. I'm sure we are able to squeeze it. I'm sure the presiding officers, in spite of the pressure on their time, they'll be able to accommodate this, and also for them to be able to ask questions or to follow up on the issues and the posers that they put to the media for them to be clarified or to be responded to. I suggest that we take the questions within the time that we've got, and after that we can have the networking session, if we could call it that, where we are able to help ourselves to the food that is placed right at the back of the sitting. So can I then take hands, Babalo? Sure, all the hands up. All the hands up. We will be able to take one round of questions from both sides, from both the presiding officers, parliamentary officials, and the media. And maybe we can be able to take 6 questions, 10 questions. Okay, I see the speaker's hand has also gone up. For a question, I'm just saying that tongue-in-cheek. Let's start with Babalo, and then we have Bulelani, then we have Yan, and then we have Marianne Merton, Mr. Green. Can we just take first that round of questions, and we will note them, and then we create an opportunity for responses or discussion around each question that is raised. Babalo? Can you please just introduce yourself before you ask your question and the media house from which you come?
Thank you, Luzuko. My name is Babalo Ndenze from Independent Newspapers. Just for the speaker, I'll leave the other questions for my colleagues. I just want to find out from the speaker if you could just bring us up to speed with plans to expand this precinct of Parliament, or can we expect to attend meetings at inadequate venues at 3-star hotels in Bateman Street for the next 5 years? Where are we at the moment in terms of that expansion?
Bulelani?
Bulelani, SABC. Mine is to the NCOP chair. Now, there is a pending High Court judgment on a ruling that she's made. I want to check that if the High Court does find in favor of the complainants in that matter, would she consider stepping aside given the insinuations that, she may have been impartial? Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Yube.
Thank you, Mr. Jacobs. Jan Yubar for the much maligned Sunday Times. I guess we've learned that the Oscar Wilde quote that the only thing worse than being talked about is not being talked about is coming into play. However, I do want to put the following question regarding...
the mic is not very clear.
Okay,
Yeah,
don't worry.
Much better.
Okay, is this better? Okay, Speaker, cutting to the chase. I saw last week a document that went to the POA in which the Sergeant at Arms and the police's version of what happened on November 13th was related to the POA, in which the Sergeant at Arms understates the number of police in the National Assembly, at which there is no reference to any public order policing members going in which there are many contradictions between the police version and the Sergeant at Arms version, amongst also which it is claimed that the Sergeant at Arms, for the first time, she claims that she ordered the police in, claim that I'm pretty sure will be contradicted as well. And then the statement being made that the SAPs were prevented from leaving by members of Parliament instead of being chucked out. Now, these are not affidavits, and no individual member of the police has made a statement that's been included. And I got that strange feeling that no one might be to blame, to quote George Bezos. What I wanted to know was the status of these statements, seeing that they are not affidavits, and whether Parliament accepts these statements, what is the way forward? Thank you.
Thank you, Yan. Marianne?
Marianne Merton, Independent Newspapers, but also partly as part of the PGA in follow-up to the Chairperson Tabo's statements. I can't talk for 94 or 95, I wasn't here, but I've been here first since 96. Up until 2-3 weeks ago, The cameras in the National Assembly were operational well before the session starts going. We saw MPs, ministers, everyone arriving. We saw table staff sitting down. That has changed in the past 2 to 3 weeks. We now see an emblem, and very often the feed cuts in very late when the presiding officer is already on the chair. The feed cuts the moment when the presiding officer says the sitting is now adjourned. This has never been the case since I've been here first, since '96, up until about 2-3 weeks ago. Suddenly, the feed cuts out. In the interest of an open relationship, just to sketch some of the context for some of the questions that you as Parliament, as presiding officers may face. This is the context we come from. Most of the PGA journalists, members, are very experienced journalists. We are not youngsters that have just graduated. It's a very complex environment. And so I'm absolutely heartened to hear that you provided the most latest update of rules to SANEF, to the editors who are based in Johannesburg. No such courtesy was issued to us here who engage with Parliament on a day-to-day basis. Also, in terms of context, I think the apology by Parliament regarding the barring of access, not only of members of the media, but also of citizens to the NCOP on November the 6th, is indeed appreciated. However, I understand that there has been no follow-up from Parliament's side to actually raise the issue with the relevant police division whose member was involved. Thus, the police do not have a written complaint, and the chances of this happening again are very likely. So there are certain things that also need to be made possible through the administration of Parliament, and perhaps this is a matter for administration rather than the presiding officers, in order just to ensure and to smooth some of the points out. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The final question for the round, Mr. Green.
Thank you very much, Program Director. I'm Vuyani Green from SABC. My question is directed to the Speaker. It's about this issue of impartiality, or her impartiality, which has come under the spotlight. Speaker, you'll recall that in the run-up to the elections, there was a question that was put to you by the reporters who were doing the story. I only watch it on my screen at home. It was with regard to the Public Protector's report on Ngandla, and the question was, what's your take on that? Do you think that the President should pay as per the Public Protector's recommendation or finding? And your response was, we strongly disagree with the Public Protector. Now, fast forward to after the elections, because at the time you were not the Speaker. You assumed the position of Speaker, and the issue came under discussion on August the 21st. With the benefit of hindsight, don't you think that it should have been prudent for you to recuse yourself from sitting or chairing or presiding over the House on that day, given the fact that you have already prejudged the issue? And the reason I'm asking that is because many people, or your detractors, they are citing that your remarks with regard to that issue, and they say the manner in which you handle the deliberations on that day testify to your, to their assertion that you are impartial or you are biased. Lastly, on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you score your performance since you assume the position of Speaker after the election? Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. In attendance with the presiding officers here, other than the Secretary who was introduced at the beginning, is the Deputy Secretary to Parliament, Ms. Baby Kyawa, who's here. We've got the House Secretaries, the Secretary of the National Council of Provinces, Advocate Modibeti Pindela, and Mr. Masbulele Klasa from the NA, who will be assisting in responding to questions, especially on issues that relate to the administration. I'll afford the opportunity to the presiding officers now to deal with some of the questions that have been raised.
Thanks, Luzuko. The issue of space continues to be one of those issues that we're grappling with. The good thing is that in the past 6 months, we've been able to have discussions that include the executive, because as you know, what's the name of urenta endaweni lo lo mnikazi wendawo, the landlord for all of us in the state is the public works department. So we've had discussions with them. We've actually had discussions also with a very important department in terms of finance, because you can't deal with a project like that on your own. It has to be a multi-sectoral approach. So it's an issue we're still engaging on. And therefore, while we're engaging, until we get to a point where there are some agreed answers on how best to deal with immediate pressures, because that's what for us is important, is the immediate pressures. You continue with the meetings wherever you find the space. So yes, we continue on that basis. The Deputy Speaker will deal with the matter of the POA, where Yan Nean sounds like he was participating. He had access to documents, but it's an issue which I will leave to the capable hands of Yan Yan. I appreciate the background, the history on the issues of the feed. In fact, a lot of what is being said is something I'm hearing for the first time, and I think it would help on the part of the Secretariat to please put before us the necessary information so that we can be better able to be ready to engage on these issues, because as was observed already by the person who was dealing with that issue, some of the areas are better handled by the administration. And as I say, I'm glad we now have a secretary. I welcome the question from Vianney, because, you know, many times something happens, there's an engagement with journalists, and other journalists pick the issue up from somewhere and they run with it and they repeat it and they distort it and they put it out there in the most distorted ways, and you just wonder and you really just get helpless as to what to do when you are the one who was there, but what you are reading is not what took place where you were. The question that had, I don't remember the question, but what I said in response to a question or an issue in that particular briefing, I remember it was here in Cape Town, I said, we know one thing first. The report, the content of the report of the public protector was largely the same as the content of the report of the task team of government. That's point number one. It is only at the point when the public protector then says, there are areas, and then she lists them, where she uses the language of non-security measures. Non-security. Where she then lists areas and comes to conclusions about those. And I say to her, but some of those things really are up for debate. Because on what basis do you come to a conclusion of something being non-security or security upgrades? Right? It's a question that arises. And my input and the perspective I expressed was that we don't agree with her necessarily on those conclusions, because one has to engage her conclusions on what is the basis on which you, like me, who's not a security expert, conclude that this was a security measure, that was not a security measure. And then on that basis, which I question personally, because I don't know what qualifies me or her to know what's security and non-security. And I then say, I therefore quote one instance, which in my view is debatable about the things that are quoted there by herself on the basis of her own perspectives. So that is the statement I made. I never said we disagree with her report. As I say, her report was the same as the report that the task team of government had actually put before us. It had come to Parliament. You know, the content is the same about what happened and all of that, the background. She then comes to a point where she then puts forward her opinions, her views about what she was saying was a non-security. I think, is there a question I didn't answer which I should have answered? Eh? Tony? It's up to you. It's up to you. Now I'm doing my job, and I know that you don't know my job. I do my job, and it's you who must then do the scale, because it's your preoccupation. I'm not preoccupied with that. I'm just doing my job. Can we allow Deputy Speaker aphendule ndawo in our meeting?
My response is brief. I requested to answer this question because I was requested by the presiding officers to chair that meeting. And we expressly made it clear that these reports that we had said we would not have a discussion of these matters until we have some reports. And that we will not conclude the discussion of those reports because there was a meeting towards which we were headed that afternoon. And that there's no way in which we could conclude what was before us. So the questions that Jan raises can't arise because we ourselves have not concluded that meeting. So he had the privilege of that information that he had from whatever sources. We, as far as that meeting is concerned, that meeting continues. And this is how we agreed that we would have the next opportunity to be able to engage with the reports beforehand. Because part of our responsibility when we get reports is to engage them, agree or disagree with them. We have not done that. All we said that day, that as to the questions for which we were meeting there, about giving assurances and guarantees, that we were not in the business of giving guarantees about what we were being asked to give guarantees about. That the status quo remains, the rules will apply. So that's the position. I don't think we would be in a position to answer what he's raising there. The important thing is really that meeting continues after those consideration of those reports and any that we might come after that, we will be in a position to tell you what our position is in all of those issues that were raised there. Thank you very much.
There is a question which has been directed at me. Whether I will step down if the court finds that I was impartial. Firstly, the matter is still at court, and therefore I'm not going to opine on it. Secondly, there are rules which were adopted by both houses of parliament, and there are joint rules which must be obeyed when we have joint sittings. I want to say here up front, when I preside, I will, without fear or favor, apply the rules. It doesn't matter who it is. It doesn't matter who it is, we will keep order. The fact of the matter is that when you are chairing the House, you are chairing a meeting, and that meeting has rules which must be. It can't be that when you have a rule that says you will not do this, and you accept it, and another rule that says if you don't want to do this, you will be chucked out of the House, and you accept it, and when you are chucked out of the House, the presiding officer is impartial. So I just wanted to reiterate that presiding officers, we will apply the rules. Thank you.
I just want to respond to the issue of the feed. I think, Marianne, what you're raising is quite concerning. And we ourselves have got correspondence from SANEF, and we're sitting with the spokesperson to really do an analysis and comparison of how the images within the houses have changed over time, and it's something that we're going to correct. And I know that Luzuka has actually suggested that we actually have a workshop on the outcomes and look at other related policies that would assist us to handle the matters better. And we note those concerns that you've raised. Luzuka? We're running out of time, and I'm sure we're right at the end of it.
No, certainly. So this is a conversation that we'll continue to have. You have the assurance that this is only the beginning. Colleagues, I think we're going to have to bring it to an end now because we are really now on borrowed time. Thank you very much to the presiding officers, Secretary to Parliament, House chairpersons and senior members of the administration, PGA executive, and everybody else. Thank you so much, colleagues. The meeting is now adjourned.